Chateau d'Amour, better known as the Mother of Darkness Castle because of the absolutely heinous events that have gone down there. It lies between the French and the Belgian border. It is highly secured. There is barbed wire, trip lines, like state-of-the-art security everywhere. Nothing to hide, I'm sure. And BBC, National Geographic, many media outlets have tried to get access, all been denied. In my opinion, based on my research, it was one of the Illuminati's ritual sites. Probably still would be, but they've gotten so much exposure. And since the beginning, it was royalty and the elite. The first one, 1849, was a famous count. 20 years later, 1869, it was the famous bloodline, the Cathars, a prince. And they came from the bloodline of Vlad the Impaler. You don't know who he is? He was the original Dracula. Like, he inspired Dracula. Vlad III, a Dracul. And he would take these huge stakes, put them up people's anuses, through their stomachs, their chest, esophagus, and out their mouth. And he did this to people by the thousands. Like a true story. The Modern family is an elite Belgian family, like one of the most wealthy in Belgium. They, of course, own a pharmaceutical company. In my opinion, pharmaceutical is silent government. It's called the Mother of Darkness Castle because researchers found that a coven, an elite coven of witches, called the Mother of Darkness Coven. Well, I'm pretty sure they branded them that. I doubt they called themselves that. They're also being branded as from an old satanic family, quote unquote. But like honestly, satanic is like a very outdated word and idea. I think the only people in actual satanic cults were like teenagers from the 90s and Anton LaVey. If anything, Luciferian worship, but a lot of times it's, these different gods, quote unquote, dark extraterrestrials. Marduk, of course, is the one that comes up most, even with the Solomonic magic, unfortunately, because he's the one that's always been demanding the human sacrifice, child sacrifice, all over the world. Chateau d'Amour was the ritual site that these women would be initiated into their quote unquote coven. And to do this, they had to perform heinous child abuse. But it was the same child abuse that they had experienced themselves. They had been groomed and trained into this, and it often led to, dissociative disorders, including multiple personality. I have to say, allegedly on this one, because obviously no one's admitting to it. Whole next segment, everything alleged. Allegedly, Chateau d'Amour was one of the many ritual sites for Eyes Wide Shut, which was a real ritual. Stanley Kubrick, who made the film, was actually exposing them. However, I don't think he knew the extent. I haven't seen the movie in a while, but I don't remember any child sacrifice. He died in his sleep of a heart attack 6 days after the final cut, before it could premiere, before it could air. Kind of like Patrick H. Price, who was a psychic spy for the CIA, got a retractor inside of Mount Hayes, saw the extraterrestrial base and the government working for them, and then all of a sudden had a heart attack in his sleep, and the body was cremated before they even notified the family. And the child abuse, but mostly child sacrifice, they would film so that they could blackmail the participants involved. Who was stealing these children for them? Marc Dutroux. Children were just disappearing left and right in the 90s. And they finally found them after plenty of significant tips that should have been followed up. It took them 4 years to find these 2 children in a basement in Charlotte. And then videotapes started to surface, bodies started to surface. He had been adopting, exploiting, murdering children for the elite. This information went public, but he was still being protected from the Belgian government. High up cases of the elites, they were being blocked. Nobody could see what was going on. He was receiving generous funds from the government his entire prison stay, in which he bought more estates to continue his activities. He was sentenced 13 years. He served 3 for multiple cases of child murder and a million other charges. Councilmen, high-ranking judges, lawyers, all kinds of government from all over would participate in these orgies, where they played the most dangerous game, where they stripped a child naked, like no shoes, anything like that, then gave them a head start to go run out into the woods, where they would all then hunt them down. So the fact that an orgy is involved in this and they're playing a game with it, not just sacrificing the child for the gods, just shows that they're into it. I mean, like they said, these women it happens to them when they're young, and that probably psychologically gets them off later. One of these ritual abuse cults of the elite called Abraxas, which Abraxas was actually a Gnostic god, said to be one of the first of the archons, but I can guarantee you Gnosticism has never practiced anything like this. And basically the connection between Abraxas and Marc Dutroux, there was an anonymous letter at the time, but later discovered who he was, that was asking for Abraxas for certain presents for a certain age. Later confirmed that these presents were defiled and murdered. And then they took the blood in little cups and dipped little quill pens and wrote exactly the events for their god to bring about the ultimate plan, whatever that is. It was later revealed that heavy corruption took place in this case, including deliberate sabotage of DNA. So citizens found out. They gathered in multiple cities to protest. Highest number was 30,000 people. So judges were removed, detectives were removed, pretty much everybody government that was on the case was removed. They reassigned, they reevaluated. Turned out everything that took place was true, plus more. They found another house, this like wooden house, where they found the owner's body with a bunch of children corpses. Marc Dutroux admitted that he had murdered them and then bought the house fire sale price with government money. It turns out a city treasurer and multiple police officers involved in the case were in the cults. When the Abraxas house was raided, 150 police officers went into the house and were seen taking out tons of evidence, not just files and papers, but actual skulls. Marc Dutroux got multiple life sentences. He got 11 counts of child murder, though we know it was a lot more than that. But, the elites got off scot-free.